The shocking way to destroy a narcissist's mask of superiority and leave them powerless. Let's be honest, narcissists walk through life like they're invincible. They project an aura of superiority so polished and practiced that it almost looks unshakable. To them, they are the smartest voice in the room, the most capable, the most admired. Every gesture, every smirk, every word is part of a performance designed to keep that illusion alive. But here's the truth they don't want you to see. Their kingdom of confidence isn't built on stone, it's built on sand. And the moment someone knows where to press, the illusion collapses. It's not about breaking their heart. It's about dismantling the illusion of perfection they cling to with everything they have. That's what this video is about. I'm going to show you how to dismantle the false superiority they wear like armor. You'll learn how to shake their foundation, strip away their certainty, and expose them for what they really are: fragile, desperate, and deeply insecure. Whether the narcissist in your life is a boss who thrives on intimidation, a friend who can't survive without admiration, or a partner who feeds off your energy, the tools you're about to learn will make them unravel, slowly, relentlessly, and in ways they can't prepare for. 1. When the mirror cracks. Think of a narcissist as someone permanently glued to a gilded mirror. They spend their lives worshipping the reflection, polishing it, rehearsing their movements to make sure the image staring back looks flawless. That reflection is their lifeline. It's where they draw their power, their confidence, their sense of worth. Everything revolves around keeping that mirror intact. But here's where you hold the advantage. You don't need to smash it with anger or harsh words. You don't need to argue or try to beat them at their own game. All it takes is one subtle truth, one moment of honest reality that slips through the cracks, and suddenly the mirror isn't whole anymore. That single fracture is enough to undo the image they've obsessed over for years. And once it breaks, no amount of effort can restore it to its former shine. This is their greatest fear: exposure. Their superiority is nothing more than a carefully stacked house of cards. The moment you breathe a truth they can't deny, it wobbles. Push just a little further, and the collapse is inevitable. Imagine calmly pointing out that the emperor has no clothes and watching the realization ripple through their mind. That's the power of truth. It doesn't need to shout. And the fallout is devastating for them. Once their reflection is cracked, they can't unsee it. They'll keep returning to those shards of the mirror, desperately trying to piece them back together. But the flaw will always remain. That mask of invincibility begins to slip, and beneath it lies a person riddled with the same doubts, insecurities, and fears as everyone else. Only for them, it feels like death, because their identity was never built to survive reality. That's the shift. That's the moment you strip them of the one thing they depend on most: the illusion of superiority. And without it, they are left staring at a version of themselves they can no longer escape. 2. When silence becomes the loudest voice. If you really want to unnerve a narcissist, don't argue, don't explain, don't plead, just go quiet. Silence is their greatest tormentor because their entire existence revolves around attention. They need to be seen, admired, feared, or envied. To them, life is a stage, and everyone around them is part of the audience. But the moment you refuse to clap, the spotlight dims. Their act falls flat. Narcissists are like flames, burning only as long as there's fuel. Take away that fuel, the praise, the emotional reactions, even the anger, and suddenly, they are left choking on their own emptiness. Silence doesn't just deny them validation. It forces them to face the hollowness they spend their lives running from. And here's the beauty of it. Silence is not passive. It's devastatingly powerful. It's like trapping them in an echo chamber where their voice bounces back unanswered. They'll fidget, lash out, exaggerate their antics, anything to provoke a reaction. Yet the more you withhold, the more they unravel. Slowly, they realize that their control over you has slipped away, and that realization is like poison to their ego. When cracks appear in their armor, it's not because you shouted them into submission. It's because you refuse to play. Your silence becomes their mirror, reflecting back the truth they've spent their lives avoiding. Without an audience, they are nothing more than an insecure soul pretending to be untouchable. 3. The weed of doubt overtakes the garden. If silence is one weapon, doubt is another. Plant it carefully, and it grows like a stubborn weed in the manicured garden of their ego. At first, it looks harmless, barely noticeable among the roses of their self-admiration. But with time, it spreads, creeping into every corner of their mind until it strangles the illusion of perfection they've fought so hard to preserve. Narcissists thrive on certainty. They convince themselves that they are flawless, that they are the smartest in every room, that their version of reality is unquestionable. But all it takes is one gentle nudge, one subtle question that shakes the foundation of their confidence. You don't need to confront them head-on. A simple, almost innocent remark like, "Are you sure that's the best way?" is enough to plant the seed. That seed festers. Every time they try to dismiss it, it grows stronger, wrapping itself around their thoughts. The doubt becomes inescapable, a shadow whispering that maybe they are not as invincible as they claim. Doubt is the silent assassin of ego. It doesn't strike loudly, but once it takes root, it consumes everything. As Nietzsche warned, those who fight monsters must be careful not to become one themselves. Narcissists wrestle daily with their monstrous ego, desperately trying to keep it intact. And the moment you introduce even the smallest crack of self-questioning, you win. Because when they begin doubting their superiority, they are no longer standing on solid ground. Their empire of confidence collapses, crushed beneath the weight of their own insecurities. 4. The Emperor's illusion shattered. We all know the timeless tale of the Emperor's new clothes. An emperor, obsessed with appearances, struts through his kingdom convinced he is clothed in the finest silk, when in truth, he is naked. Everyone pretends to admire his grandeur. Everyone except one child bold enough to speak the truth. That single voice shatters the illusion. This is the Narcissist story. They march through life wrapped in their fantasy of superiority, demanding admiration and reverence as if it were their birthright. In their mind, they are flawless, untouchable, almost divine. But you, the one who dares to see clearly, become that child in the crowd. The moment you pierce their illusion with a simple truth, their empire of lies begins to crumble. A quiet statement like, "You're not as perfect as you think," slices through the myth they've built brick by brick. Narcissists cannot tolerate this exposure. They dread it. Their entire survival strategy depends on surrounding themselves with enablers and flatterers who echo back the narrative they've created. But truth is merciless. Once spoken aloud, it forces them to confront what they fear most. That beneath the mask of superiority, they are simply human, flawed, ordinary, and desperately insecure. Mark Twain once observed, "It's easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled." And that's the narcissist's nightmare. Because once someone calls out the lie, the spell is broken. The illusion collapses. And no matter how they scramble to rebuild it, it never holds the same power again. That one truth becomes a crack in their armor, spreading until their entire facade comes crashing down. 5. Breaking the strings of control. Narcissists thrive on manipulation. To them, every relationship is a stage play, and they must always direct the scene. Emotions are their favorite instrument, and they play them with precision. If they can make you angry, they feel powerful. If they can make you anxious, they feel in control. If they can make you doubt yourself, they win. Their mastery lies in emotional puppetry, pulling strings until you dance to their tune. But the script changes the moment you stop reacting. When you refuse to rise to the bait, when you withhold the emotional energy they crave, the power dynamic shifts. Suddenly, they are no longer the puppeteer. You are. By choosing calm over chaos, composure over rage, you hijack the very tool they use to dominate others. This is the essence of true strength, reclaiming your emotional autonomy. As Gandhi wisely said, "Nobody can hurt me without my permission." Every time you deny them the permission to stir your emotions, you take back what they thought belonged to them. Of course, they won't surrender easily. They'll escalate, provoke harder, throw bigger tantrums to force a reaction. But when you remain steady, unshaken by their theatrics, their control disintegrates. Their power over you was never real. It existed only in your responses. And once they realize they can't move you like a pawn on their board, the game is over. Because deep down, they know one devastating truth. Without the ability to control your emotions, they are powerless. 6. Indifference, the silent firestorm. If there is one thing a narcissist cannot live without, it's attention. It is their oxygen, their drug, their lifeline. They will twist themselves into theatrical performances, create chaos out of thin air, or demand applause for the smallest of gestures, anything to keep the spotlight burning on them. But nothing terrifies them more than your indifference. Nothing cuts deeper than your refusal to play along. When you turn your gaze away, when you no longer feed their hunger for validation, it is like dousing their blazing fire with ice-cold water. They don't know how to function without that supply. Deprived of admiration, they begin to unravel, desperately scrambling to reignite the spark. Some will grow louder, more dramatic, pushing harder for your attention, while others will crumble under the weight of being ignored. Either way, their power weakens. Your indifference is not passive, it is power in its purest form. By denying them the emotional fuel they crave, you declare that your life does not orbit around their approval. You show them that their validation is meaningless, their theatrics invisible, their existence incapable of controlling you. And that realization slices into their superiority complex like a blade, exposing just how fragile their inflated sense of self truly is. Because the narcissist's entire identity hinges on being the center of your world. The moment they realize they are not, their illusion of dominance begins to fracture. They may rage, they may beg, they may scheme to pull you back into orbit. But the truth stands firm. Without your attention, their empire starts to collapse from within. 7. The fall of the false king. Every narcissist builds themselves a throne. They spend years polishing their crown, stacking their pedestal higher and higher with arrogance, control, and illusion. From their perspective, they are untouchable, reigning supreme in a world where everyone else exists merely to serve their ego. But what they fail to recognize is this: the higher the pedestal, the harder the fall. Here's the secret: you don't need to knock them down. You don't need to launch an attack or stage a rebellion. All you have to do is withdraw the worship. Stop bowing to their crown. Stop playing the role of their loyal subject. Treat them not as royalty, but as they truly are: ordinary, flawed, and human. In that single act, the ground beneath their throne begins to crack. You've seen it happen. The boss who thrived on fear suddenly exposed as insecure when no one buys into their bravado. The friend who thought they were above everyone else suddenly irrelevant when people stop praising them. The partner who once acted irreplaceable suddenly realizing they are not. When you stop elevating them, they look down from their self-made heights and discover there is nothing holding them up. The fall of kings is always dramatic, and narcissists cannot survive the impact. When they crash, they don't know how to recover. They claw, they rage, they desperately try to rebuild their crumbling pedestal, but the crown no longer fits. What remains is not a ruler, not a monarch, but a person stripped bare of illusion, exposed for what they always were. Their empire, once so grand, is nothing more than a house of cards, and when it collapses, they are left standing in the rubble, powerless, crownless, and painfully human. Here's the truth: narcissists only look unshakable because they've mastered the art of pretending. Their entire superiority complex is nothing more than a carefully stacked house of cards, fragile and unstable, no matter how solid it may appear. And you hold the quiet power to dismantle it piece by piece. You don't need rage, you don't need drama, you only need awareness. When you hold up a mirror to their flaws, when you stop giving them the oxygen of attention, when you plant even the smallest seed of doubt, their empire of illusion begins to crumble. You see, every time you refuse to feed their ego, you are pulling bricks from the foundation of their false kingdom. The silence you give them feels louder than any argument, because it denies them the validation they so desperately crave. The moment you stop elevating them, the pedestal they've built starts to collapse beneath their feet. They thought they were untouchable, but the fall from their throne comes swifter than they ever imagined. And the most devastating part for them? You didn't even have to push, they fell on their own. That's the irony of a narcissist's downfall. It doesn't come with explosions or dramatic clashes. It arrives quietly, like a slow dismantling from within. Their insecurities are the termites in their grand palace, and the moment you stop playing their game, those insecurities take over. They begin to question themselves, to see the cracks in the mirror they worshipped, and eventually, they become their own undoing. In the end, the narcissist is always their greatest enemy. So here's your takeaway. You don't need to fight them on their battlefield. You don't need to sink to their level or prove yourself through endless battles of ego. All you need is composure, clarity, and the strength to stand your ground. The rest, they'll do to themselves. And once the doubt takes root in their mind, you've already won. If you're ready to keep learning the strategies that disarm, outsmart, and outlast the narcissists in your life, make sure you subscribe, like, and leave a comment below. This journey is only just beginning, and what's coming next will open your eyes even further. Trust me, you won't want to miss it.